Ash and static clung to the upper atmosphere of Miram, a bitter haze left behind by the largest battle the sector had seen in a generation. High above the blackened curve of the capital world, the wreckage of orbital stations still burned, slow spiraling infernos visible even from the surface. Shattered hulls drifted, twisted metal bleeding sparks into the void. The final Valador dreadship hovered at the edge of the engagement zone. Its hull jagged and dark as scorched alloy, resembled a fractured spearhead, angular, predatory, and unnaturally still. Twin pylons jutted forward like the horns of an ancient siege ram, glowing faintly with residual charge. Along its flanks, deep gashes from kinetic impacts still smoldered, and peeled armor exposed scorched internal framework. Yet despite the damage, it held position, silent, calculating, unshaken. Council forces, bloodied and scattered, regrouped with measured pride. Crack battle cruisers formed a loose phalanx, their elongated hulls glowing red-hot from vented heat. Their aesthetic was martial elegance, ships forged like swords, sleek and predatory, now battered and trailing coolant vapor. The Udari destroyers, compact and insect-like with rounded sensor bulbs and trifled propulsion cones, hovered in adaptive wedges, forming perimeter webs in calculated silence. Further back, the Varun bombers loomed like grotesque sea creatures, their swollen bellies quivering with low-frequency energy as their wide, semi-translucent wings undulated against the fatting radiation. The dreadship remained, then without warning its core pulsed, a single deep red once across the battlefield. Static surged. Council ships blinked offline for half a second, just enough for every captain to stiffen, every gunner to reach instinctively for manual override. But it was no attack, it was goodbye. The fractured spear twisted impossibly, breaking apart into hexagonal plates that folded inward and vanished. No hyperspace flash, no slipstream trail, it simply disappeared between one breath and the next. One by one, scattered remnants of the Valador fleet followed. Those few still mobile retreated in silence, their movements exact, prescripted, surgical. They did not flee in chaos, they withdrew in sequence like a hand curling into a fist just before it disappears into shadow. No distress signals, no final charges, no transmission of defeat, just absence and silence across the front line. The remaining council captains hesitated, waiting, wondering if this was another tactic, a trap. But no second wave came, only drifting debris and the faint, pained hum of failing systems. Then slowly the communications began. Victory confirmed, Miam was still standing, and with that the celebration began. On the surface, cheers thundered from the Plaza of Athelos as the first formation passed overhead. Holograms of victory banners shimmered across the skyscrapers, projecting symbols of the Council's unity, the spiral crest of the Kravix, the geometric fractal of the Udari, and the triple-eyed sigil of the Varun. Flags waved in artificial wind. Crowds roared in exaltation. Columns of armored infantry paraded through the capital's core, flanked by banners and aerial unmanned spacecraft. The Kravk soldiers marched with surgical precision, their platinum exo-armor embedded with kinetic absorption plating. Spiked pauldrons rose over their heads like ceremonial wings. Their faces, long and angular, were covered in intricate masks etched with war prayers. The Udari followed, slimmer, with jointed arms ending in trifled claws, moving in synchronized elegance. Each bore a protocol staff pulsing with contained plasma, more ornament than weapon. The Varun lumbered behind, towering four-limbed beasts with iridescent kitten plating. Their elongated skulls pulsed with bioluminescent pride, each step shaking the ferrocrete beneath. From the balconies, high dignitaries addressed the crowds. Councillor Vizek, a Krax with silver skin stretched tight over elongated bone ridges, raised his arms. "This is the day the galaxy reclaims its peace," he declared. "The Valador menace has been extinguished." A cheer erupted like a quake through the capital. Confetti burst from drone pods. Trumpets synthesized in the grand halls of Melam's Ministry of Culture blared across the sky in celebratory resonance. Far above the celebration, in the silence of orbital station Ranks Theta, Admiral Jonas Phoenix stood alone in a narrow observation bay. Its walls Spartan and without decoration. No banners, no medals, just glass, steel, and the slow rotation of the planet beneath. He wore a dark gray uniform, clean, undecorated, utilitarian, no command stripes, no ceremonial braid. His presence on the station was classified as observer status, a diplomatic formality extended to the Human Defense Command during the war effort. He hadn't spoken to any council member in days. In his hand, a compact display blinked silently. Lines of data ran across the screen in real time, numbers shifting too subtly for untrained eyes. The human interface showed inconsistencies not in council sensors. Those had long since dismissed the battlefield as clean. No, these were human signals, tuned to detect distortions that fell outside known signatures. Jonas tapped once, bringing up a secondary feed. Subspace displacement patterns, faint, chaotic, and localized in 3 points across the far edge of the system. One spike wouldn't raise concern. Three aligned at a triangular vector within minutes of each other. Those were the fingerprints of something rehearsed. He didn't blink, he simply keyed in a single-channel encrypted call. A moment passed, then a voice came through, low and familiar. Lieutenant Marlo Vega, stationed aboard the Eidolon, a recon frigate shadowing the system's edge. Admiral confirmed three-phase fractures. Triangular alignment, not natural, Cerberus was right. Jonas didn't respond immediately. His thumb hovered over the display as he watched a fourth signature begin to form, weak but with the same fluctuating variance. Below, Meloram's sky turned gold with artificial auroras. The Krex launched a fireworks barrage from low orbit, cascading in symmetrical ribbons of cyan and crimson. Crowd chants echoed through the open city streets. Alien children danced in circle formations. Hollow drones captured every angle for redistribution across the Galactic Core's communication grid. Inside Rehex Theta, Jonas stood still. His eyes didn't track the light show. He was looking past the moon of Suternes into the dark. On the feed, one of the irregular phase patterns blinked out, then returned, then pulsed. Jonas turned, stepping toward the far console. He issued no commands, he simply stared. Behind him, technicians reviewed post-battle reports, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing behind the human's eyes. He closed the display and said nothing. An encrypted data burst breached the relay node at Argona Station, officially decommissioned 10 years ago, now just a ghost spinning through the land belt. Its comms array blinked once, received the transmission, and forwarded the payload along a narrowband quantum line buried beneath the Council's surveillance net. The packet carried no insignia, no sender ID, just a string of vectors and a cold signature. Aboard a maintenance skiff posing as a Udari inspection vessel, Agent Lionel Graves glanced at his wrist display as the signal lit up. His face, lined and expressionless, didn't shift. He was seated across from two Udari engineers mid-conversation, both oblivious, towering bipedal insectoids. The Udari's facial expressions were subtle, micro-movements in their mandible plates, shifts in the vibri that lined their cheeks. Neither noticed the human's eyes flinching toward the screen. "Diagnostic complete," Graves said aloud, standing. "Your filtration arrays are cycling suboptimally. Send someone with a precision core drill." Without waiting for acknowledgement, he turned, passed through the hangar deck's outer airlock and vanished into the void. 2 hours later, the same signal reached Jonas Phoenix through a hidden channel routed via civilian trade frequencies. He received it aboard a diplomatic transport docked in the upper tiers of Melam's orbital corridor. The message decoded itself in 4 seconds. Validor withdrawal vector matches non-surrender patterns. Analysis, strategic regrouping, risk high, recommendation, initiate Cerberus. For most of the galaxy, Earth was a logistics hub, nothing more, a species that delivered crates, not consequences. The humans had entered the galactic scene late and without ceremony, after the Fifth Accord had already drawn borders and established hierarchy. They were tolerated for their efficiency in supply chain architecture and tactical simulations, but not trusted with strategic command. Their representatives were rarely invited to war councils. Their ships were seen as outdated, their admirals irrelevant. Their presence at Meloram had been framed as diplomatic courtesy, a gesture, not a partnership, but behind the smiling faces and empty seats, Earth had been busy. Across dozens of council stations, embedded human operatives posed as clerks, technicians, sanitation workers. Some ran freight manifest systems, others scrubbed power cores. Each one passed unnoticed in societies that measured worth by age, height, skin luminescence, or vocal pitch metrics. The humans had neither the time nor desire to match. Every week, data flowed from their positions. Traffic logs, ship maintenance schedules, energy fluctuation readings. None of it looked suspicious because it wasn't, until it was all put together. Earth's intelligence network was a patchwork of shadows stitched together by the very bureaucracy that excluded them. RAM tool stations, Bikari outposts, even KEX flagship dry docks, they all used variants of the same open-source inventory system adapted over decades by contractors. It was efficient, it was simple, and it was written by a software team based in Recipe Earth. Layered deep inside that code were observation subroutines, passive recorders that watched for anomalies invisible to most. None transmitted in real time, that would be too easy to detect. Instead, they compressed, encrypted, and traveled through maintenance bots, satellite garbage collectors, and failed courier bots. Information always found a way. When the Valador retreated, Council analysts celebrated. Human analysts, however, did not. The data didn't match any surrender behavior, no broadcasting degradation, no heat signatures of reactor overburn, no erratic flight paths, no confusion in swarm vectors. Instead, the Valador had pulled back with military discipline, each ship rotating through a geometric lattice pattern that suggested preparation, not defeat. On the lowest deck of the Elchid, buried inside a disguised supply carrier orbiting the mining colony of El Rosfif, Commander Ezekiel Ramirez reviewed the data in silence. The ship's crew had no idea who he was. To them, he was just another clipboard checking or quotas. The door to his quarters slid shut behind him. He keyed in a secondary code on a plain analog panel bolted into the wall. The display lit with a pulse. The message was short: Cerberus protocol activated. Begin mobilization, rendezvous Sutna's shadow line. On the other side of the galaxy, deep in the iced caverns of the Rasari Drift, Kazuo Ishiawa sat inside a simulator chamber embedded in the hull of the Yamato. He was surrounded by paper manuals and notebooks. His fingertips were ink-stained, and a mug of cold tea sat untouched at his side. The simulation paused. A single green light blinked on the overhead console. Kazuo rose to his feet. "No more drills," he muttered. Lars Petrovic received the same signal while aboard the Tesla, a stealth recon vessel currently docked to a Udari comm relay. His cover was Logistics Inspector. The Udari technician assigned to assist him, a towering male named Grask Toon, was complaining about inconsistent mass readouts in their rear cargo module. Lars nodded, made a few generic suggestions, then excused himself to submit recalibration orders. The moment he entered the private uplink chamber, he removed the gloves of his uniform, revealing the dermal implants beneath. He touched the interface once, and the lights shifted. Cerberus confirmed. His smile was tight and brief. Samir Jalilay was already ahead of schedule. From the bridge of the Saladin, a dredged-out dreadnought classified as decommissioned in Council archives, Samir oversaw the final phase of shielding retrofits. Engineers worked under extreme silence, no AIS, no automated tools. Every system had to be analog, every interface hardened against intrusion. He walked the length of the command deck with Chief Engineer Farah Nuri at his side, inspecting the manual targeting arrays and hard-switch weapon circuits. "We're behind on inertial stabilization," Farah reported, her accent crisp, her eyes focused. "Compensate with counterweight calibration. Reinforce the gyro coupling with titanium mesh and pray the recoil doesn't shear us in half." She cracked a grin. "Understood." His command console blinked. He didn't need to open it. "They've activated it," he said. "Oh, Cerberus." Samir nodded. "Bring the heat shields online. We leave orbit within the hour." On Miram, in the same quiet observation deck as before, Jonas Phoenix stood in the dark, watching the rotation of Sutnies on the edge of the system. A single light blinked on his portable display. He tapped the screen. A symbol appeared, 3 concentric circles, each marked with a different emblem, one from a defunct Earth naval branch, one from a phantom logistics company based in Mars orbit, and one from the original Human Expeditionary Corps. "Cerberus active, no further contact. Initiate final positioning." Jonas didn't blink. He turned from the stars and spoke in code. Through steel and silence all across the void, something ancient began to stir. In the ice rings of Sudanese, the black husks of dreadnoughts came alive, silent titans rousing from years of engineered hibernation. Power cores thumbed. Hulls groaned as systems warmed under cold steel. Gravimetric anchors disengaged. They had no transponders, no AI cores, no visible heat signatures. They were invisible to the Council, but not to Phoenix. He stood over the console, watching the alignment in progress. No one else on the orbital station noticed the transmission. No one noticed the power fluctuation or the brief pulse of light in the far corner of the system. No one noticed Jonas Phoenix whisper the last words of the day into a dead channel. "Let them celebrate. When the curtain falls, we'll be the ones holding the knife." Hydraulic clamps hissed. The final corridor sealed beneath 30 meters of frozen shale and basalt. Deep below, the dreadnought Saladin came online, one subsystem at a time. No internal lighting. No AI boot chimes. Just a cold, rising hum that reverberated through the hull like a creature waking from hibernation. In the weapons bay, grease-smudged technicians in insulated suits adjusted the magnetic brackets of the primary cannon housing. The weapon was older than most Council fleets, a spinal-mounted mass projector fueled by twin gravitic cores suspended in free spin. The casing had been stripped of ceramic polish and reassembled with heat-dispersing flanges designed by hand. Near the core chamber, Two engineers manually synchronized the firing matrix using a pair of analog crank controls. Generator sync is holding, Chief Engineer Farah Nuri reported, her voice tight over the comm. We've reached full charge on both containment units. Double-check the recoil venting, Samir Jolly replied from the command deck. If the bleed valves lock mid-discharge, we'll vaporize the aft section on the first shot. Understood. Manual purge already programmed. Samir stood at the main console, arms folded. Around him, his bridge crew moved with purpose, few words, no excess. The Saladin was a relic by any standard. No automatic guidance, no fire-and-forget systems, no guidance algorithms, just hands, calculations, and instinct. Every move calculated by human instinct. On the far side of the same moon, hidden within a naturally formed trench carved by centuries of gravitational erosion, the Yamato waited in total darkness. Captain Kazuo Ishikawa sat cross-legged in the auxiliary operations alcove, leafing through a well-worn manual printed on aged polymer sheets. He turned each page in silence, eyes moving over mathematical formulas and jump equations with methodical calm. The tactical jump system the Yamato relied on was unique, not stabilized through conventional anchor points, but calibrated to fold space between unstable gravitic wells, a maneuver outlawed by every species in the Council due to its volatility. Earth had never ratified that ban. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. Captain, came the voice of Enin Pavel Marovich, quiet but urgent. Sensor drift adjusted. Navigation confirms alignment vector for jump pattern delta. Kazuo didn't look up. Leave the engines cold. I want the jump dry mapped first. No displacements until we have confirmation from Saladin. Aye, sir. From orbit, the moons of Sutness looked like dead rock. Nothing moved, no signals, no heat blooms, just silence. But beneath the crust, titanic shapes laid dormant, ships shaped not for elegance but survival, each scarred with the marks of retrofit after retrofit, rebuilt by human hands with no concern for aesthetics. Redundant hulls, dual magnetic shielding, internal oxygen cycling systems designed for full crew manual override, and each of them awake. On the dark side of the sixth moon, the Tesla, Lars Petrovic's dreadnought, pulsed with quiet energy. The ship had no lights except for the red ambient glow of standby mode. Lars stood in the targeting pit, overseeing the calibration of the rotation system for the rear mast driver. It was a maneuver the crew had dubbed blade spin, a centrifugal dispersal used to deflect plasma bolts and create recoil inertia for drift adjustment mid-combat. Rotation arrays misaligned by half a degree, said his weapons officer, Sergeant Emil Stoa. Rebalance with ballast exchange in Bay 4, Lars answered. And if the hydraulics scream again, cut them and use the locking spindles manually. Stoica grinned, old school. Lars offered a thin smile, we're not here to be elegant. At the edge of the moon's gravity shadow, the Elcids floated in silence. Its ventral surface was completely covered in repurposed mining panels, irregular, jagged, perfect for deflection and scan obfuscation. Inside the war room, Ezekiel Ramirez reviewed formation vectors on a hollow slate. Dozens of projected shapes hovered above the table, each a simulation of Valador fleet deployments. He grunted. They'll approach from polar angle, trajector wedge, maximum acceleration. They'll expect resistance from Melaram's southern defense ring. Lieutenant Adam Fisher adjusted the projection. You think they'll lead with destroyers or carriers? Carriers, they'll assume no one else is in the system. They just won't see us coming. They're not wrong. He slid a marker across the projection. The moons of Saturnes lit up, but they won't be ready for us. Back aboard Saladin, Samir Jolly stood at the bridge viewport, a slab of transpar steel that faced the raw cavern wall. No stars, no sky, only rock. His wrist display chirped once. Encrypted priority signal, direct channel, no trace route. He tapped it. A flat line of audio opened, then a voice, Jonah's Phoenix. Bridge call all units. One by one, each dreadnought captain joined the secure line. No video, no names, only voices in the dark. This is Phoenix, Jonah said. You are to maintain shadow status until further orders. Begin final positioning. Formations will be transmitted on coded bands only. Understood. Ramirez answered first, copy. Ishikawa said next, ready. Petrovic followed, standing by. Samir confirmed. A pause, then Jonas again. No broadcasts, no transponders, no light. This is not ceremonial. This is direct intervention, nothing leaks. Silence, then a click, channel closed. On Rex Theta, Jonas sat alone in the auxiliary command chamber, eyes fixed on the data coming through the hidden tactical console. His fingers hovered over the control surface as faint tremors of energy crossed the scope. Phase distortion, 3 points, rapid, unstable. He leaned forward, the waveforms pulsed again, fractured, irregular. Jonas leaned closer to the console. The Valador had begun their jump and the humans were already in position. Space folded without warning. A ripple tore through subspace. Then the first Valador warship snapped into real space like a blade unshathed. It erupted into orbit above Sutness with the soundless violence of a whip crack through the vacuum, sleek, angular, its hull the color of scorched titanium. Red pulsars flickered along its spine, glowing with active charge. Behind it, a second vessel emerged, then a third, and soon dozens more. They formed a closed wedge, precision spacing, formation perfect. No drift, the arrival was not rushed. It was deliberate, coordinated, measured. The Valador vanguard advanced with brutal symmetry, carriers locked behind spearhead cruisers, flanked by hunter escorts that moved like serrated daggers. No registration codes, no diplomatic channels. Just the echo of drive signatures that trembled across Sutness moons, like the footfalls of a beast approaching in the dark. On the upper atmosphere of Melum, Council defense stations began to flicker. Kravek's outposts first, massive crucifer platforms with overlapping shield webs, followed by the Udari relay domes and the ornate Varun communication towers. Then the tremor spread inward. Static swallowed their readings. Command channels stuttered, then went silent. Encryption layers fractured under pressure from waves of synthetic distortion unlike anything seen before. The Valador had begun jamming. Then the first wave hit. 3 long-range Valador bombers shaped like elongated sides with massive underbelly pylons dropped from the lead formation and initiated a silent burn toward high orbit. Their payloads launched in unison, kinetic rods with no energy signature impossible to track. Within seconds, Council surveillance satellites across the sector began to vanish. Silent implosions, total blackout. On Ranks Theta, Jonas Phoenix watched it unfold without blinking. The console in front of him showed nothing at first, then flickered as his ship's isolated human sensors bypassed the interference. A clean wireframe of the battlefield emerged, 43 Valador ships in formation, carving a path toward Melram. He tapped a control on the side of his chair and magnified the fleet structure. His crew waited in silence. "Time to vector breach," he asked. 52 seconds, replied Commander Tybalt Trent, seated to his right. "They're not rushing, they're aligning for full penetration strike." Jonas gave a single nod. "Open the gate, let them see what we buried." Trent relayed the order: execute launch prep, begin activation protocol. At the far end of the system, concealed under the shadowed curvature of Suterni's third moon, Elcid's wake shifted in place. Ezekiel Ramirez leaned over his tactical station, eyes locked on the hollow map as the Valador fleet vector lined up toward the capital. His voice was calm, almost casual. "Moons are about to be born," he said. "Acknowledged," came Phoenix's voice over encrypted comm. Aboard Alcide, a light blinked amber. Silent alarms rippled across the lower decks. No sirens, no flashing strobes, just a change in pressure, the low vibration of engines warming to life. Inside the engineering core, the reactor trembled. Its core, an ancient dual-cycle fusion cylinder designed to operate under vacuum, minimal parameters came online with a guttural hum. Cracked steel braced with titanium mesh shifted as venting ports released the stale air of decades-long hibernation. Crew members moved in silence, hands tight on manual controls, helmets sealed, routines hardwired by months of training. In the Tesla, Lars Petrovic stood beside the spinal corridor as the Dreadnoughts' mass driver cannons unlocked from their magnetic clamps. Each weapon arm extended outward, rotating into forward firing positions like limbs awakening from mechanical sleep. "Charge cycling," Sergeant Emil Stoka reported, all systems reading green. Lars spoke without turning. "Hold until line breach, we're not the ones making the first move." Aboard Yamato, Kazuo Ishiawa sat alone at the nav core. "Confirm jump calculations," he said quietly. "Ready," Marovich answered. Kazuo pressed his palm to the release lock. "Open the engine bay, begin kinetic envelope compression." Outside the ship, ancient thruster vents split apart along the hull. Cold gas hissed. The ship's outer panels slid away in sections, exposing the raw mechanics of the fold engine, massive rotating gyros wrapped in static stabilizers. The room trembled with building force. Saladin moved next. Samir Jolly stared at the void through the viewport. The rock in front of him shuddered as gravitic displacement from the reactor core pressed against the moon's shell. Cracks formed across the cavern walls. Dust fell. Main power at 89%, Nuri confirmed over comms. Unseal the launch gate, Samir ordered. Massive support arms retracted. Sections of the tunnel wall folded back. For the first time in decades, the nose of Saladin tasted the stars again. Primary systems locked in, release on my mark. The dreadnoughts began to move from orbit. Nothing changed until it did. The surface of Sutness moons fractured, not an explosion, not heat, just sudden movement, geological plates retracting in precise alignment. Craters split open, revealing long, jagged canyons, and from within those chasms they emerged, silent, massive, predatory. One by one, the dreadnoughts of Earth crawled into the stars like sleeping titans roused from ancient graves. Their hulls bore no insignias, no colors, no ceremonial plating, just iron and heat shields and protruding weapon banks. Saladin rose first, then Elsids with her blocky silhouette and extended rear drive coils. The Tesla drifted upward with her rear section spinning in slow calibration. Yamato held position for a second longer before pivoting like a blade slipping from its sheath. On ranks Theta, Phoenix leaned forward. Confirm separation, he said. Trent responded, all four ships clear, fully active. Phoenix nodded, his voice was cold as steel. Let's begin. The sky above Sutness cracked like stone under pressure. Massive tectonic plates of reinforced lunar crust groaned apart, retracting along seams engineered decades earlier and never recorded in Council archives. From those gaping wounds in the moon's surfaces, the dreadnoughts of Earth surged forward, black silhouettes against the cold stars. Unlit, unpainted, unyielding. There was no glow from shield plating, no ceremonial formation, just raw mass and silent intent. Saladin broke free first, engines silent as its frame drifted into the outer perimeter of the Valador formation. Its vententral batteries rotated into position, locking onto their first target without fanfare. In its wake came Elchid, shifting sideways like a glacier, uncoiling, slow, inevitable. The Tesla rotated its rear stabilizers, bringing its dorsal mass driver into alignment. Last came Yamato, hull barely reflecting starlight, its fold engine running cold as it stalked forward like a drawn blade. On ranks Theta, Jonas Phoenix stood behind the comms officer's station. Target priority line anchor. Eliminate their command relay, he said, voice like stone. Acknowledged, came Ramirez's voice, then a pause. Weapons free. El Cid fired. The dreadnoughts' gravitic cannon discharged without a sound, just a pulse of compressed space that shimmered as it tore forward. Half a second later, a Valador cruiser, one of the forward vanguards, shaped like a hammerhead and armored with dense ceramic plating, convulsed mid-drift. Its hull bowed inward, then split down the spine like wet cloth under strain. Debris spun outward in high-velocity spirals. The ship didn't explode, it came apart like it had never been whole. Within moments, Saladin followed. Its forward cannons released three sequential bursts, direct impact. The energy struck the edge of the Valador spearhead formation, collapsing a trio of smaller attack ships that had only just begun their vector burn. The attack came so fast their defense fields never activated. The ships folded like tin pressed between gears. Mark drop now, Ishiawa barked aboard Yamato. A sharp flick of controls, a burst of spatial compression. In a blink, Yamato vanished, then reappeared inside the Valador flank between two cruisers still adjusting their alignment. Before either could process the anomaly, Yamato's lateral cannons discharged simultaneously. One cruiser disappeared in a flash. The other drifted, split cleanly in two, both halves burning silently as they spiraled toward the gravity well of Sutness. Inside the command bridge of the Valador command ship Vraxith 7, Supreme Strategist Kalnaraz loomed above the sunken control pit. His form was tall and broad, draped in overlapping segments of matte black warplate fused directly into his body, grown, not worn. The ridges of his neck armor extended like blunt fins, rising each time his secondary lungs contracted. Beneath the plating, his skin, dark and scaled in uneven hexagonal patterns, shimmered faintly under the emergency lights, as if absorbing rather than reflecting color. The officers around him clicked their mandibles in fractured rhythms, communicating through pulse tones embedded in their throat plates. Their limbs bent at subtle wrong angles, graceful but wrong. Their armor wasn't strapped or mounted, it had grown into their bodies like bone scaffolding. What they wore had no seams, no hierarchy of rank, only function. "What are we seeing?" Kalnaraz demanded in a sharp, guttural cadence. The helmsman, a younger Valador officer with a crest of neural spines, hissed in confusion. No registry, no drive signatures, impact sources unclear, systems not responding to threat mapping. Kalnaraz stared at the void. In the distance, two more ships vanished from formation, still no visual confirmation of hostiles. The Valador had no name for what was happening, no protocol. Their simulations had predicted council retaliation, but this wasn't that. This was something else. Then sound cracked through the galactic silence. A transmission, open channel, wideband. It echoed through every council and Valador frequency, cutting across military comms, civilian networks, and orbital beacons. Jonas Phoenix's voice filled the void. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity. Then silence, no threat, no declaration, no demands, just the truth. Back aboard Saladin, Galilei rotated his forward batteries as another cruiser approached at attack angle. His hands moved with calm precision, flipping physical toggles, aligning the analog scope. Behind him, Chief Engineer Farah Nuri relayed capacitor levels. Core stable, recoil dampeners set. Samir ordered fire. Another burst, another ship gone. Inside the Tesla, Lars Petrovic executed his maneuver. The dreadnought spun rapidly on its axis, bleeding rotational inertia into a gravitational discharge. The spin expelled debris and sensors, false reads from its immediate zone, and gave its weapon crew a clean line of fire. Target acquired, Stoica confirmed. Send it, Lars said. The Tesla's dorsal mass driver fired in sequence. First to break the Valador forward buffer, second to scatter the response units, third to punch a hole in their rear formation. Each shot landed. A dozen Valador ships attempted to reposition, but it was already too late. Every time they adjusted, the dreadnoughts moved with terrifying simplicity. No delay, no overcorrection, just vectors and velocity. They didn't hunt like the Council. They didn't posture like the Kravks or swarm like the Udari. They struck like predators with one purpose. Back aboard the bridge of Rixith 7, Kalners growled, his claws gouging the edges of the command platform. Activate override, he hissed. Force reconnection, flush all jamming layers. No jamming, strategist, the comms officer replied, voice shaking. They are invisible. Kalners turned toward the viewport. Then finally he saw it. Yamato drifting from behind the shadow of a shattered moon, silhouette jagged and unpainted, rail guns charged, lights dark, the human flag nowhere to be seen. Just steel. Kalnars stepped back, he understood. They weren't here to win, they were here to end it. Inside Rex Theta, Jonas Phoenix lined on the edge of the console. Around him, his officers moved efficiently, their focus unshaken. Target grid Theta 7 confirmed destroyed, Trent reported. Enemy formation collapsing. Jonas didn't smile, he didn't nod, he just gave the next order, continue, maintain silence. Across the dark, the dreadnoughts obeyed. The Valador scrambled to respond. Inside the command ship Vraxith 7, emergency subroutines flared to life. Dozens of secondary crew interfaces lit up with interference protocols, synthetic override commands, and swarm countermeasures. Black armored operators stabbed their hooked digits, half kitten, half alloy, into control panels grown directly from the ship's nervous lattice. Initiating neural command uplinks to the fleet AI cores, noxious mist vented from cracked conduits. The deck plates shifted underfoot, groaning with stress as the ship's exonerve layer convulsed beneath them. Override the jamming field, engage target analysis, barked Kalaraz, spines raised, mandibles twitching in fury. It's not jamming, strategist, the comms officer shrieked. There is no frequency, no field, the targets aren't transmitting. Another panel exploded beside them. Sparks rained, the deck shook again. The Valador had no playbook for this, no heuristic AI designed to counter ships that operated without digital command layers. Their interference pulses echoed across the void, seeking interfaces, code strings, neural links, but found nothing. The human dreadnoughts were dark. Every maneuver, every shot, every command was issued by hand, mind, breath. On the bridge of the Tesla, Lars Petrovic gave the signal, begin blade spin. Confirmed, Stoica answered, already bracing against the bulkhead. Mass driver charging, stabilizers at threshold. The Tesla's rear thrusters pulsed unevenly, and the entire ship began a controlled high-velocity spin, its longitudinal axis twisting as if the dreadnought itself were a thrown dagger. From the outside, the motion looked chaotic. Inside, every ribbed panel moaned in protest. Crew members gritted teeth as artificial gravity failed to compensate. It felt like being inside a Warhammer mid-swing. As Lars completed a final calibration, a Valador corvette broke formation and released a barrage. A cluster of volatile plasma charges launched in a staggered arc designed to overwhelm standard energy shields. Trajectory incoming, Stoica warned, eyes on the kinetic scope. Full rotation sweep, trust the math. The Tesla's spinning mass distorted the plasma trajectories. Each incoming charge passed through shifting inertial vectors created by the ship's movement. One charge burst prematurely, detonating meters short. A second skimmed the hull and splashed harmlessly off reinforced kinetic plating. The final charge drifted wide, its targeting matrix disrupted by unexpected momentum profiles. The Tesla spun through the chaos and stabilized, its dorsal batteries already rotated into attack position. "Return fire," Lars said. One shot, the corvette vanished. Near the gas plumes of Sutness, Saladin reoriented mid-vector. "Target acquired," Nuri called out. Valador cruiser shifting toward planetary arc. Samir Jalilay studied the readout, then tapped a command on the analog interface. "Too slow," Jalilay murmured. He didn't trust calculations alone. He trusted timing, the kind you bled for, not programmed. Without ceremony, Saladin jumped. A rapid compression of space twisted the dreadnought sideways through a fold tunnel, reappearing just off the Valador cruiser's port side. The sudden shift created a gravimetric pressure wave, slamming into the enemy vessel's flanking escort and pushing it into the cruiser's hull. Impact. The escort crumpled, the cruiser spun off balance. "Anchor them," Samir ordered. Farah toggled the release. A charged pulse of kinetic gravity burst from Saladin's side-mounted launcher, a controlled implosion of directional force that locked both Valador ships into a mutual descent vector. They collided, then shattered. In orbit above Mium, Udari defense networks tried to reboot. Council command officers paced in panic across polished deck plates. The Udari themselves, multi-jointed, kitten-skinned, their carapaces lined with reactive nodules, emitted staccato pulses of distress. "We have to deploy reinforcements," shouted High Marshal Tellin, a Udari officer with 2 pairs of ocular lenses and a curved voice box tuned to 3 harmonic layers. "Where is the human fleet transmitting from?" "They aren't transmitting," snapped a Kravex admiral beside him, slamming a fist against the hollow display. "There are no signals, no ident beacons. They're not council registered." The Kravex, tall, plated with coppery armor grown into their skeletal frames, moved with rigid precision, but now even they looked shaken. Their dreadnoughts parked in ceremonial orbit were paralyzed. None had responded fast enough. Their ships floated armed and shielded, but still, no orders, no initiative, waiting for protocols that would never arrive. On board the Council flagship Sovereign Accord, signals blinked in failure across the comm. No one could reach Melorum's orbital defense systems. The blockade around the capital was intact, but not theirs. It was human. Below, in the moon shadow, Yamato repositioned like a sword dancing between currents. Ishikawa's hands moved in perfect rhythm with Mirovich's readouts. "2 targets closing in from rear arc," Mirovich said. "Set fold interval to 9 seconds. Target offset on exit point. I want to bleed their lateral thrust." Kazuo reached for the manual throttle and held his breath. "Engage." Yamato vanished again, displaced through an unstable fold window. It emerged directly above the 2 Valador interceptors, where atmospheric drag from the moon's thin exosphere caused micro-fluctuations in their velocity control. "Release payload," Kazuo said. From the underside of Yamato, a burst of high-density canisters shot out, each one containing inertial destabilization mass. As they impacted, the interceptors lost orientation. One spiraled and clipped its sister ship. Both tumbled into the gravitational range of Suderni's inner orbit below. The human fleet adjusted seamlessly. The Valador began to break. On Saladin's bridge, Jalilay tracked 3 enemy ships changing course. One peeled off, then another, then 5 more. "They're running," Nuri whispered. Across the Valador fleet, fallback protocols clashed, some ships attempting full-burn retreat, others freezing mid-maneuver awaiting non-existent commands. The swarm mind had fractured. Samir didn't speak. He raised a hand and made a slow, deliberate motion, then pointed. "Field charge, directional detonate." Saladin launched a single sphere, a gravity spike trailing no heat, no light. It arced behind the escaping ships, then released a controlled implosion. The vacuum behind the fleeing Valador twisted. One cruiser jerked sideways and clipped another. A third tried to correct and caught the edge of a debris field. 2 exploded. Fragments spread like ash across space. On Ranks Theta, Jonah's Phoenix watched from the command chamber. The screen before him showed only vector trails and decayed signals. Tybalt Trent turned from the console. 14 confirmed destroyed, 7 more adrift. Jonas didn't answer. He was focused on the motionless patterns, how the debris spun, how the survivors hesitated. No pursuit, he said finally, they already know. He closed the display, turned his back on the stars. The galaxy had just seen what came after the silence.